A windy morning in Reykjavík, the capital of Iceland. The sky hangs low and gray. In the city's big hospital, a little baby is born. That baby is you. Your name is Gunnar. Welcome to Iceland. When you're born in Iceland, you're not just born into a family. It's almost like you're born into the whole country. Because Iceland's population is around 400,000 people. In other words, the entire country is roughly the size of a medium city. And that means almost everyone here either knows each other or is connected somehow. The local grocer in your neighborhood might know your grandfather from somewhere, or your kindergarten teacher might turn out to be your dad's childhood friend. In this country, nobody is a total stranger to anyone, and everyone is connected to everyone else in one way or another. Iceland's naming culture is also very different from other countries. For instance, your last name and your father's last name aren't the same, because in Iceland, a person's surname is their father's first name. Since your dad's name is John, your full name comes out as Gunnar Jónsson, in other words, Gunnar, son of John. And if you'd been a girl instead of a boy, your last name wouldn't be Jónsson, it would be Jónsdóttir, meaning John's daughter. Just think, if you also had a sister at home, your father's last name, your mother's last name, your last name, and your sister's last name would all be completely independent of one another. On top of that, people in Iceland can't give their children just any name they want. The Icelandic state has a committee called Mannanafnanefnd, whose job is to decide which names are acceptable. Between girls' names and boys' names, there are around 4,000 officially approved names in total. If your mom and dad had wanted to give you a name that wasn't on this approved list, the committee could have turned it down. But luckily, Gunnar is one of the oldest and most common names in Iceland, so there's no trouble at all when it's time to name you. Your dad, John, is a fisherman. For centuries, one of Iceland's most important trades has been fishing. For Icelanders, fish has always been one of the most basic sources of food. Sometimes your dad stays out at sea for days, and when he comes home, he smells of sea salt and diesel. Another thing, people in Iceland usually don't busy themselves with just one job or one pursuit. Your dad, for example, plays bass guitar in a band on the weekends. This doesn't strike you as strange at all, because everyone here is like that. One person is a fisherman, but also a poet. Another is a plumber, but also a writer. Iceland is one of the countries with the most musicians and writers per capita in the world. In Iceland, creative and artistic pursuits aren't so much a profession as a second way of life that nearly everyone has. Your mom, Katrine, is a nurse. In Iceland, women and men share all the work equally, and for years, Iceland has held the #1 spot in the world for gender equality. Your mom and dad, for instance, do all the housework together and make all the decisions together. They both work, and by the time you're just 1 or 2 years old, you enter preschool. And what's more, this is perfectly normal in Iceland. Let me tell you one more thing. Your mom and dad actually never got married, and in Iceland, this doesn't surprise anyone at all, because here, many couples live together, have kids, and spend a whole lifetime together without ever officially getting married. In Icelandic society, there's hardly any difference between being officially married and not. So trust me, nobody even brings it up. If you're a child born in Iceland, your life is going to run on a rhythm unlike anywhere else in the world. Because in Iceland, the real boss of life is the sun. In summer, the sun almost never sets. Even at midnight, it's as bright outside as it is in the middle of the day. Because of this, people can still be outside at 2 in the morning, and you'll see kids out playing late into the night. On top of that, Iceland is one of the few places on Earth entirely free of mosquitoes, which means that all summer long, you won't hear a single mosquito buzz. Winters, on the other hand, go exactly the opposite way. The sun shows its face only a few hours a day, and it never fully climbs all the way overhead. In winter, the sunlight comes in so low that the light bouncing off the snow can blind you. That's why, on a snowy day in the freezing Icelandic cold, it's totally normal to see people walking around in sunglasses. In Iceland, winter is generally a season for staying in, reading by candlelight, and spending time in warm, cozy indoor spaces. Children born in Iceland grow up with far more freedom than in other countries. In Iceland, for example, you might see a child out on the street on their own, because Iceland is one of the safest countries in the world. So much so that people often don't even feel the need to lock their homes, their shops, or their cars. Crime is so rare in Iceland that even the police patrolling the streets don't always carry guns. And as a child born in Iceland, you'll get to enjoy living freely in a place this safe. In Iceland, swimming pools sit at the center of social life. These are pools filled with geothermal hot water, and they're called Sundlaug. In Iceland, the pool isn't just for swimming, especially in the hot tubs. They call them Heitur Pottur. People sit for hours, chat, gossip, and pour their hearts out. Your mom starts taking you to these pools when you're still a little baby, because in Iceland, kids learn to swim almost before they learn to read and write. These pools will be a place to socialize for the rest of your life. In the evenings, your grandmother tells you old Icelandic folk tales. Your favorite is the one called Huldufólk, which means the hidden people. The story is about invisible beings who live among the lava rocks. As she tells it, your grandmother warns you never to disturb their homes. You can't quite tell whether she truly believes it or whether she's just telling it for the sake of the story. But once you learn that roads in Iceland are sometimes built around certain rocks on purpose, you start to realize these tales shape people's lives more than you'd think. When you turn 6, school begins for you. In Iceland, children attend a single school from age 6 to 16, and it's called Grunnskóli. Iceland's education system is also quite different from the rest of the world, especially in this respect. In Iceland, the kids of the same neighborhood go to the same school, and for about 10 years, barring unusual circumstances, they never split up. In other words, unless a student specifically chooses to switch schools or their family moves away, all the kids who start school together in the same class at age 6 stay together until they're 16. So, the kid sitting right next to you in elementary school is someone you'll keep studying alongside until you're 16, and the bond between you probably won't ever fully break for the rest of your life. Thanks in large part to this school system, friendships in Iceland last for many years, often a whole lifetime. But there's an unseen side to these tight friendships you find in Icelandic society, and it's this. If you ever need to join one of these friend groups later on, people are perfectly polite to you, but they also keep their distance. In other words, if you're up against a group of friends who've grown up together since the age of 6, breaking into their rock-solid circle is pretty hard. It's like an invisible wall woven into Icelandic society. In Iceland, the deepest friendships usually have roots that go back to childhood, and joining a group like that later in life is no easy thing. When you turn 14, you go through one of the first big ceremonies of your life. It's called Fermingur, and it's a kind of Lutheran confirmation ceremony. But in today's Iceland, for most young people, this ceremony has turned into more of a tradition than a religious event, a sort of coming-of-age celebration. At this ceremony, your whole family gathers, you're given gifts, and your childhood is officially behind you now. Young people in Iceland start working earlier than in many other countries. At 13 or 14, for example, you work over the summer at jobs the municipality sets up for kids. You clean the local park. You plant flowers. It's called Vinnuskólinn, meaning work school, and nearly every Icelander works these jobs during their youth. At the same time, sports clubs and music lessons are some of the most important parts of your life, because in Iceland, the whole system is built on keeping young people busy, always occupied with something. When you turn 16, Grunnskóli ends, and it's time to make the first big choice of your life: which upper secondary school to attend. In Iceland, this is called Framhaldsskóli, and every one of the classmates you've studied with for 10 years scatters off in a different direction. When the time comes to choose, 2 main paths open up in front of you. Either you go to the academic track called Menntaskóli, which prepares you for university, or you head toward a vocational school. In Iceland, vocational education is never looked down on. Fishing, mechanics, welding, carpentry, and trades like them are always respected in Iceland and bring in a good income. But you choose the academic track, the Menntaskóli. In Iceland, upper secondary school lasts 3 to 4 years. Throughout this time, like most young Icelanders, you study while also working a part-time job to earn your own pocket money. And on the weekends, you hang out downtown in Reykjavík with your group of friends. When you graduate, you live one of the most special moments of your life. They place that white graduation cap on your head, the Stúdentshúfa. And like every Icelander who finishes the academic track, you celebrate your graduation with your family, full of pride. Now the door to university is open in front of you. If you're a young Icelander, the way your life unfolds can be different from people in other countries. In Iceland, for example, people can have children at a pretty young age. You too become a father while you're still in your early 20s, still single, and not even finished with university yet. And this is perfectly normal in Iceland. In Iceland, people can raise a child while working and continuing their education all at once. So while in many countries the order goes school, career, marriage, then kids, in Iceland the process can play out very differently. In Iceland, work life doesn't run in a straight line either. At a certain point in your life, for example, you try heading out to sea with your dad, but you realize fishing isn't for you. After that, you might start working at, say, a tourism company. Switching careers a few times over the course of your life isn't seen as a failure in Iceland. By the way, if you were born and raised in a small country like Iceland, your love life plays out differently from the examples in other countries too. Remember what I told you at the start of the video, that everyone here knows everyone somehow? Well, for exactly that reason, when you meet someone, the first question that pops into both your heads is, wait, are we related? That's the very reason Iceland has a database called Íslendingabók, which holds the family tree of nearly the entire Icelandic population. So in Iceland, before starting a relationship, young people can log into this app on their phones and check whether they're related. I know it sounds strange, but if you were born and raised in a country with as small a population as Iceland, it makes perfect sense. In Iceland, if at some point you and the mother of your first child decide to go your separate ways, separations like this rarely turn into bitter hostility. After the split, for example, you keep raising your child together, and years later, when you meet someone else and start a new relationship, your kids grow up within a big family web, with step-siblings, with several parents. If you're an Icelander, the land you live on reminds you every now and then who you are. A volcano erupts, for instance, and the whole sky fills with a cloud of ash. Another year, a nearby town is evacuated because of the threat of lava. In winter, a huge snowstorm rolls in, and the entire country is shut indoors for days. If you live in Iceland, you have to accept that the real boss is nature. When you reach middle age, your life settles into a calmer rhythm. In Iceland, most families own a cozy summer cabin out in the wild. You too head to your own cabin in the summers. You go for walks, you pick wild berries, you spend lovely hours under a sun that never sets. And around Christmas, one of Iceland's most beloved traditions takes place. On Christmas Eve, people give each other books, and that night the whole household quietly reads. When you turn 67, you retire, but after retirement, life doesn't fully stop for you. Like most Icelanders, you keep busy with something at this age too. Every morning, for instance, you go back to those geothermal pools and you chat and spend good time with friends you've known for decades. And one day, you come to the end of a long and beautiful life. Your family never forgets you. They go on remembering you, bringing you to mind again and again. The generations that come after you are born and raised in those same safe neighborhoods, socialize in those same warm geothermal pools, and live a beautiful, peaceful life, just like you did. If you'd been born in Iceland, your life would most likely have looked exactly like this. So which country's life do you think we should talk about in the next video? Share your thoughts in the comments, give the video a like to help it reach more people, and subscribe to the channel to stay tuned for all our future videos.